Starting again with another Crash Out Chronicles with a fantastic episode here. We've got a real heavyweight in the narco journalist world, a true player for many years, Guillermo Galdos. Guille.
Ioan, how are you, man? What a pleasure to be here with you.
I'm good, man. So Guillermo Galdos, we've both been kind of running the circuit parallel for many years. He's been always doing more TV while I was doing more writing. But yeah, he's done many reports on the narco world, right going back, and some classics like the interview with La Tuta, where he asked him about the TV series Breaking Bad. I got some funny stories about that. The movie about El Chapo, the Legend of Legend of Shorty, and we conspired together recently on a documentary on the Mormon massacre, which came out on HBO, and I think it's a great series. So it's great to be here with Guillermo Galdos, originally from Peru, Lima, Peru, but also came up in the TV world in London, and he's done a lot of stuff here in Mexico. So great to be here, Guillermo. We're going to talk right now, particularly focused, so that conversation could go anywhere, but particularly focused on his new report, which I'll link to for Channel 4 UK, about the narco subs, the new generation of narco subs, which go across the Atlantic. So there used to be narco subs back in the day going up the Pacific along the coastline, up into the United States or into Mexico, but now right across the Atlantic for the European cocaine market. Great report. I'll link to that. We're going to talk about some stuff that's not in the report, really what happened behind the scenes when Guillermo was seeing those big piles of cocaine off the submarines. So anyway, Guillermo, great to be here. Let's just first of all talk a little bit about the old school. You've been reporting on the submarines for years. A little bit about the history. What were the old school narco submarines, or the semi-submersibles, I think they're called, that were the Colombians had before we get to the transatlantic ones?
Well, the first time I came across narco subs, it was on the Pacific coast of Colombia, and it was years ago, and I was filming actually with the Colombian police, and they were they were going after a big cocaine laboratory near the coast, and they found this submarine that was being built. And then, it was obviously always was like this myth of submarines, navigating the seas, loaded with 3,000 kilos of cocaine. And then, more and more submarines started to appear in the Pacific coast of Colombia, going up north to Mexico and to the US, as you said. But when I came across the story of these narco subs traveling from Brazil to Europe, it was in 2019 when they actually seized one of these submarines with 3,000 tons of cocaine. Sorry, 3,000 tons or 3,000 kilos of cocaine. And they found the submarine because there was bad weather. They knew about it because of informants. But the submarine came all the way into the river inlets in Galicia, and actually the captain and the crew, they managed to escape for a day or so, and then they were captured. But then after that, the Spanish police have captured two more submarines since 2019, and one of which had already been unloaded, and it was empty. And actually they found it because they sunk the submarine, but the captain brought in the submarine inside the river inlets. So when they sunk it, the submarine was moved towards a shallow part, and it came up. That's when they saw it, but it had already been unloaded. And the other one as well, they managed to capture one that with intelligence right in front of the coast of Portugal. And that submarine, no drugs were captured because as soon as the submarine was found, the crew opened these valves and the submarine sank, and the crew actually climbed on the Spanish Coast Guard boat. But yeah, it used to be a myth. Nowadays, we know that is a reality. And I've been told that submarines are navigating the Atlantic at least once a month. And I've also been told that now they not only go to Spain, to Galicia, that area that the Gallegos manage very well, and there are people that have always worked at sea, fishermen, but now they know. I knew about a submarine that went to France, for instance. So you as a buyer, you can say, listen, if you're buying the whole lot, you can ask where you want your merchandise to be delivered.
Right, that's incredible. So just when we go back to the original ones, the Colombian ones, and by the way, sometimes your camera seems to shake a little bit. It might be you've had a lot of
Okay.
time at sea in submarines.
Okay, okay,
Be
okay.
careful, maybe nudging
Yeah.
it as you go. Oh, man, that's cool. You've been down there in the depths. Going across the Atlantic with tons of cocaine. You're a bit shaky. You're finding heavy. But the original ones, they were we call them submarines. They were like semi-submersible. So once they were kind of hovering along close to the surface, uh,
Yeah.
and a bit smaller, but then they would still avoid a lot of sights. Now these new generation, they're bigger, yeah. And are they full on?
Yeah.
Like, how far are they going? Right underwater? Like, do you know how far underwater
They,
they're
they,
going?
they, they're still called semi-submersibles, but they just have a small bit that goes out,
Mm.
actually. And they're bigger. Obviously, that technology nowadays allows them to navigate with the GPS, and they have internet. They are connected the whole way. It's not that they just turn it on when they need to communicate with someone. And but yes, it's if you look at it is very simple. It is not a submarine that goes down 200 meters. No. And actually, what they were talking about was it was the police who were talking about submarine drones
Mm.
that they will have to fight in the future. But this is very rudimentary, I would say. It's a simple engine. You carry a mechanic, you carry a captain, and you carry somebody that is the verifier from the cartels. The cartels will send someone on the semi-submersible, and that will be the guy that says, listen, the drugs went across, or they were captured by the police, or they were delivered, or they don't. Normally you have three, maximum four guys. I went inside the first semi-submersible that was captured in 2019. It was very tight inside. You can actually smell, the fumes of the engine still inside. So one can not begin to imagine the nightmare that will be to spend 28 days on that boat.
Yeah, it's a great scene that where they have the captured submarine and you go inside, and I was thinking exactly the same thing. I mean, how much would you need to get paid to say go over the Atlantic in one of these things? I mean, and imagine like you're halfway there, you're like literally in the middle of the Atlantic in this makeshift thing. And so do they work like do you understand if it works? You have a little bit that goes up, and does that where the oxygen come from? The little bit which goes up and air comes in with
Yeah, the
oxygen?
air comes from there, and the smoke goes out to the back because these submarines, they are fed with petrol. And that's one of the things that I asked the police. If they're fed with petrol, you somehow, with heat sensors, you will be able to detect them in the ocean. But the problem is that it's so vast. And
Mm.
these guys, they don't take the normal commercial routes that are used by ships between, Latin America and Europe. They go like, hundreds of miles into the parallel, and they navigate along those waters. So that's what it is very difficult to patrol. But that's another thing that the police was telling me. I mean, they didn't know if they were any solar powered submarines, for example,
Mm.
because in that case, they are not burning fuel. And in that case, the heat, it will be a lot more difficult for the heat sensors to see an engine at night or anything like that. So it just makes it more and more difficult. And obviously, this is a technology that has been available for years. Nowadays, what you have is, your GPS, maybe the call that you can make from the middle of the ocean, but there are simple boats. I mean, the Spanish trafficker I spoke with, he had moved several submarines on his lifetime. He didn't tell me how many, but he said to me that with 60 kilos of cocaine, he paid for the submarine and for the crew. So you imagine if you can transport 3,000, imagine the amount of money that they're making. They're
So you're 11 minutes into this video, so you're into this crazy world of drugs and crime, psychedelics and gorillas, all of this where it leads. So why not check out www.crashoutmedia.com. That's www.crashoutmedia.com. You can subscribe for completely free and check out all of the stories, videos, analysis, reportage about these subjects. And if you like it and want to support and really become the most informed person in the room, then you can subscribe for as little as $5 a month, the same price of a cup of cappuccino. Now, back to the interview.
buying a kilo of cocaine for $5,000 in Brazil. Here in Peru, it costs $1,500 in the Peruvian mountains. In Brazil, it's $5,000. And then once they sell those drugs in Galicia, they sell it for 35,000 euros a kilo. So imagine
Yeah,
the
yeah.
amount of money that is to be made there.
So yeah, it's a 3,000. So you get 5,000 off basically. So the profit is 30,000. So it's 3,000 times 30,000.
Yeah,
That's the amount you're making. And it seems the success rate right now is massive because if they've got one a month from that network coming in, but there could be
yeah,
other networks, and they're
yeah,
only finding basically one every couple of years, then
yes.
then it's a better rate of success than smuggling dope over the US Mexico border, which maybe they find 20% of it. It's a better
Yeah,
success rate. So
completely.
absolutely booming, you can see, and they're not now. There's a couple of factors here. So we've got the factor of cocaine being produced in Latin America right now, and the factor of the demand in Europe. So talking about the Latin America side first, and you've been following the cocaine industry for many years, right from the in Peru, Colombia, Bolivia, the coca, the labs, everything. You know the cocaine industry very well. So what do you think is happening right now in the cocaine production industry in South America? Where's it booming? What's the supply like?
I think that there is a massive boom, and the amounts of cocaine that are being produced in the Andean region are a lot higher of what the Department of State or what the UN estimates. And simply because the traffickers, they've embraced, genetically modified coca plants that now you can have them, in the Amazon, for example, and the leaf produces a lot of alkaloids, something that you didn't have before, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a big threat to the Amazon. But not only that, but we discovered some years ago that the cocaine cooks, I mean, they were recycling the materials, and they were producing from a batch of coca leaves. They were producing at least 3 or 4 types of cocaine.
Mm.
The top one, which they call escama de carachama, which is the cocaine that it looks like glass. and that's the one that is exported to the US and to Europe. And then you get lower qualities cocaine, and the lowest one were the ones that they were sending to Brazil for it to be converted into crack. Brazil is the second consumer of cocaine in the world and the number one consumer of crack in the world. And it has borders with, all the producer countries. So there is a boom in production, and there is, obviously we've seen what happened in Guayaquil, with all the wars. We've seen how hot is Colombia. We've seen how things are moving around. And obviously submarines, as you said, is the perfect way of doing it, because you are, traveling from the mouth of the Amazon. Many of these trips, they begin inside the Amazon River, because they build the submarine in the bushes, and then they move it to the river, and it navigates at night, and it comes out they load obviously the submarine, and then it navigates out to the Atlantic. But it seems like very, not that difficult to do, but nobody knows how many submarines have sunk also in the middle of the Atlantic. Nobody knows if you've been run over, by a big, cargo ship that they don't see you, and they just, so we don't know that. What we know is that it's happening.
Imagine, like, in the years to come, there'll be like explorations in the depths, and they'll find tons of cocaine. It's like this period and these old, so they start in the Amazon. So basically, it's parts of Brazil which are pretty off the beaten track, which have a river
Yeah,
feeding out.
yeah,
Now they can, but do we know like where they're buying the cocaine from? I mean, obviously there's cocaine now in Colombia, in Peru, in Bolivia. Ecuador's more like a path for cocaine, but also some labs there. Do we know where
yeah.
they're buying it, and do we have any
This,
idea
yeah,
who the group's doing this?
I think the majority of this cocaine is being cooked quite close.
Hmm.
They're not bringing the cocaine from the rime in the middle of the Peruvian mountains. No, they probably bring the base, from other places, but close. As I said, now you have this variety of coca that grows very well in the Amazon. So, with and you have, all over the triple border in Peru and Brazil and Colombia, you have big coca plantations. I've been there recently. So you navigate that paste close to the place where the Narco Sub is being built, and then you set up your laboratory to refine the paste. And once you've got your cocaine bricks, you pack them, you move them where the submarine is, and then off they go. That's how it normally is it's done. And basically, this Spanish guy confirmed that the building of the semi-submersible and the place where the cocaine is being cooked, the lab, is not far away.
So we don't know, and there hasn't been an investigation that's found out if this is like, if is this the Clan del Golfo for Colombia, or kind of overseeing these, or kind of in control of these, or the PCC in Brazil, or the Mexican cartels, or some group that's just completely avoided any of these big cartels and just operating this independently.
Yeah, the way these sorry, Spanish guy, we're going to call him Luis.
Yeah.
Luis has been working in smuggling cocaine for some years now. His father used to smuggle hashish. His grandfather used to smuggle tobacco. He comes from a long line of smugglers. And the way he does it is he buys the cocaine from the Colombians. He didn't mention to me that any Brazilian mafia was involved. And what he does is he buys the cocaine from the Colombians, and let's say from the 3,000 kilos, because he doesn't have, you don't normally buy the whole lot. He's the owner of the submarine, he pays the crew, and from the 3,000 kilos, maybe 1,000 is his.
Mm.
And the other two are from a Colombian trafficker.
Mm.
And those he will pay. the Colombians will pay him for the transport, and then once the submarine arrives close to the coast of Galicia, these guys have the people that will go out on speedboats at night, then unload the submarine, sink it, and they will bring back the crew and the drugs to the coast. And once that is done, he will give his part of the drugs to the Colombians in Mexico, and then he
in
will
Spain.
stay with, yeah, in Spain. In
Yeah.
Spain. I asked him if the Mexicans were there, and he said to me that the Mexicans were trying to get into that area of Spain, but they were bringing all the stuff like fentanyl, he said, and that he knew about that.
There's another story just broken this week about a bunch of Sinaloa cartel or alleged Sinaloa cartel guys arrested in Barcelona who had a bunch of crystal meth labs and who murdered
Oh,
an Italian guy who was
yeah,
working with them. So then it's kind of
yeah,
becomes a big thing. So now,
yeah,
so talking about that side now. So okay, brings it over. He owns a ton, gives a couple of tons to the Colombians. They have their people, and then it goes into into the chain of sales in Europe.
yeah,
A
yeah,
big amount ends up in the UK, a massive consumer of cocaine.
yeah, yeah.
And I mean, what can we say about the European cocaine market now? I mean, it's booming, yeah.
It is booming indeed. I remember when I used to live in London, a gram of cocaine was 60 pounds, or it was like something of rich people. Nowadays, it's like 35 pounds. You can get a gram, 40 pounds. You get a gram. I mean, the prices have gone down. I think the quality has gone up as well. And what Luis told me was he had two uh, big clients. One was the Italian mafia, and the other ones were the Albanians.
Mm,
And I said to him, because he keeps the drugs, and it's not that he releases all the drugs in the market immediately. He said to me, he tastes the market and see, because if there's a lack of cocaine and he has a lot of cocaine, his cocaine costs more, and he plays with that leverage. And so it impressed me a lot, the fact that Luis didn't use a mobile phone. He
mm,
said to me, I don't use mobile phones. No. The other thing is, Luis was not armed.
mm.
It was a guy that you could invite to your house, or you could see him in the market, and you wouldn't even dare to think that he came from a long line of smugglers. He didn't use, massive Suburbans, or, Mercedes or Porsche. No, he had a normal car. And that impressed me a lot, because at one point it felt like, it was a refined trafficker. You almost felt like, man, these guys are different to the traffickers that I've seen in Latin America, in Colombia, in Mexico, in Peru, where they are armed. Normally they come from this is a guy that, he did finish school. I don't know if he did university, but and all his life he had been involved with the sea and the business of the sea, of seafood, fish, stuff like that. But he felt a lot more refined, and also the fact that he established immediately to me, he said, "Here we don't kill people." And I said, "What do you mean? If the head of the police in Pontevedra, stops a shipment that he was moving, they wouldn't dare to kill him." And I said, "What do you do?" "Nothing. He will defend himself with lawyers, and that's the battle that he will fight." And where's the money? His money is in fiscal paradises. I'm sure that his kids knew what dad did, worked on, and so all the family knew. So and it was like they treated us as if it was a normal business.
That's incredible. And you wonder, I mean, like things like the Mexico US border. And when you have these areas, these plazas, territories, where they're moving a bunch of drugs, and they became extremely violent. You have these insane wars, Ciudad Juarez, 9,000 murdered there over 4 years in that city, and really fighting over all of that cocaine money, all that drug money. Why is it, I wonder? I mean, you wonder, why can some drug markets be super violent and some not be? And you wonder, one thing is, like in Mexico, it's the big money, but also in Galicia, we're talking about big money there. Why is it, I guess, why is it that some places are not? The other thing is, will it become violent in the future? When you have,
That's another thing. Yeah.
yeah, because now if people see, okay, that
Yeah.
guy's chill, but then
Yeah.
somebody thinks, okay, uh, I can take him out and take his business.
Yeah.
You deal with me now, and I'm going to take his business. If I see he's making
Yeah.
hundreds of millions of euros, I want
Yeah.
to take that off his hands.
To be honest, I asked him about the Mexican and the Colombian cartels organizations working in Spain. He said to me that there was a big connection to Colombia, but the connection that they had in Galicia with Mexico was not as big as the one they had with Colombia, because traditionally they had been buying drugs from Colombia for years. This guy has been to Colombia several times. So I don't he was, I could say, a bit concerned about the arrival of the Mexicans there. And I said, are the Colombians not killing people here? And he said, no, the Colombians, they just sell it to the big players here. They're not involved in transporting the drugs to other places or anything. Once the drugs arrive in Spain, the Colombians will sell those drugs to their different clients, but they were not involved in crime, and they were not involved. This guy, he told me an amazing story where they had a submarine coming in, and basically when they were going inside, when they were getting close to the coast, they started to see quite a lot of police helicopters and stuff, and they were looking for them. So the captain took the submarine inside the river inlets. They and the Colombian guy who came as the verifier, he said, leave me here. He jumped off the submarine and he called the boss in Colombia and said, listen, they fucking captured, the submarine. But the Spaniards, they were so wise and so, experienced, that they managed to get the drugs out. And they called the Colombians and they said, listen, we managed to save the drugs. And the Colombians wanted to kill the verifier. And they said, oh, okay, this guy calls us with the wrong information. Why did he abandon the ship? And the guy said it was very hard, we were being chased and all that, but he should have stayed. And the Spaniards told the Colombians, please don't kill this guy. He did a good job. And he was not being a chicken. He was a moment when we thought, we were going to be captured. And at the end they didn't. And they didn't get captured because these guys, they paid somebody in the police to not look in an area, so they were able to disembark the drugs in that area and move them around quite quickly. But yes, you do have corruption in the authorities, not at the level that we have in the countries in South America. But also the other thing is that the criminal justice system works.
Yeah.
So if you kill the head of the police, they're going to find you and they're going to put you in prison for sure. So that's why I think at this time you don't have that amount of crimes over there.
Yeah, yeah, and an interesting video I saw a while ago with this Spanish journalist in a neighborhood filming some regular drug dealers, and the drug dealer told him to go away, and he was like, "You can't tell me to go away." And it's very different from like in Latin America, like we go into Mexico, and if some it might be some narquillo, but if they tell us to go away, we're gonna say, "You can't tell us to go away. I'm a journalist. I've got a right to film here." Just,
Cool.
just a couple of, we've got about 8 minutes left. So to get a couple of classic Guillermo stories. You've got so many from over the years, which I've heard over a few beers, but gotta tell us about your meeting with La Tuta. How was your meeting there with La Tuta when you met him and recorded the film with him?
Yeah, that was an amazing experience because I remember there were thousands of soldiers looking for him, and he gave us a window, and I went there, and actually I didn't interview him the first day because the guy was completely off his head. And I said to him that he wouldn't look serious and people wouldn't take him serious and they wouldn't take me serious if I interview him on the state that he was. So he appreciated that and he said to me, okay, let's see each other in 2 days. So then I went back and he was all, washed up and, completely with a shirt and everything. And he gave me the interview. Before he gave me the interview, he invited me a couple of whiskeys, of course, and he was very insistent. And I kept saying to him that we had to be good in order to to make sense out of the interview because he was very. I mean, I remember he talked a lot, and I remember I think that I asked him about the Chinese operating in the area, and he said to me, tell me about a single Chinese that we've kidnapped. We don't kidnap Chinese people. And he was like, oh, okay. But yeah, he was a big character. A character, you've got many of those nowadays in Mexico. And another thing that surprised me about Latuta was the amount of kids that he had. I think he had over 100. And I remember, local mothers coming with their daughters to offer them to Latuta. It was complete madness.
Yeah, yeah. So Latu's a crazy guy in Michoacan, number two of Nazario Moreno. I mean, you think you get a sense he was the number two, or you think he was kind of secretly the kind of power behind the thrones? Because he was kind of the public face who do this stuff on TV and record videos.
Yeah.
Whereas Nazario Moreno, El Mas Loco, was this kind of secretive figure. I mean, what was your sense? Did you
Yeah.
get a sense of who really ran the show there and like how
I
powerful
think,
Latuta was?
yeah, it was, I think, a war of egos over there. There was some, but clearly it felt like the Tuta had quite a lot of power and a lot of armed men, and he chose whether to speak or not Nazario.
Now you've got a funny Chapo mum story about the games.
Yes,
Take
yes,
that one.
yes, yes, yes.
Rest in peace,
No,
Consuelo.
yeah, as you know, we spent quite a lot of time in La Tuna and around when I was filming The Legend of Shorty before they put the Chapo in prison and he escaped. And we were filming in the area and we got permission, obviously, from the man himself to interview his mother. And we went there and I asked her what did El Chapo liked when he was a kid, which things he liked. And I remember her telling me how much El Chapo liked counting the notes of the Monopoly. And she would say, oh, he would spend hours counting those notes, those bills, and then, tying them together with an elastic, and he loved that. Clearly, he did a lot of that in his life.
Yeah. He always liked the idea of money, even fake money there. And yeah, I mean, you've also done as well as all the narco stuff. You've done some fascinating stuff into things like the uncontacted tribes. In
Yes, the Amazon. I mean, for years I've been a bit obsessed with the war on drugs, and I will say that my new obsession is the Amazon.
Mm.
And yeah, and I did a film about uncontacted tribes that live in voluntary isolation and without clothes, and they have started to appear more and more. They're coming out of the national reserves and clashing with tribes that live what we call in initial contact, which are people that, you know, the relatives came out of the forest possibly, you know, a decade ago or 2 decades, but they wear rubber boots, they have a machete, you know. And so there's been a clash for the last few years over there in these remote corners of the Amazon. And we managed to film in Brazil with FUNAI, which is the Fundación Nacional del Indio in Brazil. And we managed to film with a group of young people from a tribe that lived in isolation, that they came out because they were attacked either by drug traffickers or the military. We still, until today, don't know if it was the military or the drug traffickers, because the guys, they describe people dressed in black and with weapons that they just, you know, make the noise of the machine guns. But yeah, it was a sad story, and it's an incredible reality that we still have here in this part of the world.
And you think they're chasing them off to steal their land so they could just chop the trees down?
No, they're chasing. I mean, when you have traffickers going through rivers in national reserves, these places are forbidden for normal humans. And the normal reaction of an uncontacted tribe is, if they hear the engine of a boat, they will approach the river, and if they see white men, they will arrow you. So what we think it happens is that a bunch of narcos were transporting drugs, and they had a rain of arrows, and then they opened fire to the guys. And probably it was not the first time, because we understand that the guys dressed in black with weapons went after the tribe. That's why the guys that arrived in Brazil, there were no women, most of them very young men. And the reason why is because they were the guys that run the fastest.
There's no head shrinkers there. We don't have a Guillermo Galdo and Ioan Grillo's heads as little little totems there. Anyway, we're about to zap out, but amazing.
Yeah.
Check it out with the link below, and check out all the stuff from Batcher Films. We've got some other very, very interesting projects cooking. I know, so we'll cover about those in the time to come. But yeah, Guillermo Dietes, as we say, entre amigos. Un abrazo there in Peru. And
Un abrazo, hermano.
peace out, and everyone. Thanks everyone there for this one. Outro boom.